When people discuss the best sequels ever, you're going to hear a lot of names like The Godfather Part 2, The Dark Knight, Empire Strikes Back, Terminator 2, and Paddington 2. And I agree that these are all great sequels, but I never hear anyone say Gremlins 2 The New Batch. I think it's time we change that.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to step in here just 1 second, sweetheart. So what's wrong with y'all? Y'all looking like a bunch of sad sacks. This is G2, people.
G2 people.
G2 people.
The first Gremlins movie was released in 1984. It was made on a small budget of $11 million and ended up being the 4th highest grossing film of 1984. It made more than The Karate Kid and Footloose. And the movies above it on the list were Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Ghostbusters, and Beverly Hills Cop. In a year with that many big films, that's pretty crazy. It even came out on the same day as Ghostbusters and still managed to be a hit. So of course, with all of this massive success, Warner Bros. Wanted a sequel. They asked director Joe Dante to return, and at first he said no. In this really great Consequence of Sound article that details the making of the film, Dante is quoted as saying, "And frankly, it was pretty harrowing to make. We had to make up the technology as we were going along, we didn't get much support from the studio, and it wasn't a very big budget. And it was exhausting, frankly. So as gratified as I was when it was successful, I really couldn't chase the idea of spending another half a year or a year with puppets. I just didn't have it in me. So I said thanks, but no thanks." Without Joe Dante's involvement, the studio started working with other directors and writers to come up with a concept for Gremlins 2, and they struggled. At one point, they even considered the cliche sequel trope of putting the Gremlins into space. After a few years with no results, Warner Bros. Once again asked Joe Dante if he'd come back to direct Gremlins 2, and they made him the rare promise of complete, total creative control over the movie with an even bigger budget than the first one. They said, "We really want a sequel to Gremlins. We want it for this summer, and if you'll do it, we'll let you do whatever you want. As long as it has Gremlins in it, you can do it." And thus, Gremlins 2, The New Batch was born. When I think about sequels, I think of 3 different types. First, you have the continuation. It picks up the story of the first one and it advances it. You know, your Godfather Part 2, Star Wars, Marvel movies, right? Then you have the standalone. This is the sequel that can stand on its own. You don't need the previous movie to be able to enjoy it. So Mad Max and some of the older James Bonds. And then finally, bigger and better. This is when the sequel is essentially the same movie, but it's on a bigger scale. Maybe its characters are in a new location. So this is the Hangover movies, Rugrats Go to Paris, and on the surface, what Gremlins 2 looks like. I mean, it moves the cast from the small town of Kingston Falls all the way to the Big Apple. But there is so much more to G2 than this. With complete creative freedom, Joe Dante set off to create one of the wildest sequels I've ever seen. Gremlins 2 is not concerned really with pleasing fans of the first film. It drops most of the horror elements and goes all in on the comedy. Gremlins 2 The New Batch really feels like a live-action Looney Tunes movie. I mean, it's even got Bugs and Daffy in its opening. This tone makes a lot of sense considering Joe Dante would go on to direct the best Looney Tunes movie in my opinion. The movie takes the premise of the first film. You got little cute furry creatures called Mogwai, and they turn into horrible little monsters called Gremlins, and they cause havoc. But this time, we're going to shove them into a giant building in New York called Clamp Tower. This building is owned by Daniel Clamp, who's this mashup of Donald Trump and Ted Turner, but actually a little bit likable. Now, this tower, it's home to office spaces, TV studios, a mall, and a science lab that is run by Christopher Lee. The setting is such an amazing choice because it gives the movie this massive sandbox to play in, where any joke they want to make, they can make. They can go from making fun of the super niche TV channels you might find on cable to parodying Rambo to having a full-blown Gremlin rendition of New York, New York, and it all works. It's this fantastic send-up of the excess of sequels by being the most over-the-top movie possible. With every choice this movie chooses to go big, it takes so many concepts from the first one and dials it up to 11. Oh, the first movie has a character who's an inventor and his inventions don't work? Well, how about this time we have an entire tower with brand new state-of-the-art technology that doesn't work? Oh, Gremlins 1 only offered you this basic type of gremlin? Okay, well, we have a gremlin for everyone. We got the brainy gremlin, a bat gremlin, electricity gremlin, a vegetable gremlin. Sure, the movie loses the scares of the first one, but after seeing the gremlins sing along to Snow White, could they ever really be scary again? And instead of scares, we get stuff like a gremlin turning into a frickin' spider gremlin while Slayer's Angel of Death plays. Or this great bit.
Yes, I'd say it's a full-scale panic. Are you having a run on the bank scare yet? Well, it's rather brutal here. We're advising our clients to put everything they've got into canned food and shotguns.
Unfortunately, audiences in 1990 did not respond well to the wacky tone of Gremlins 2. And I mean, I get it. If you went into the theater expecting something similar to the first film, you probably would not be happy with what you saw. I do think that this movie deserves a lot more love and respect though. If you're someone who's written off the new batch because of its tone, I'd recommend re-examining the way you look at it. Don't hate it for what it isn't, and instead appreciate it for what it is. Joe Dante could have easily taken the paycheck and went the safe route. Just remake Gremlins on a bigger scale and people probably would have loved it. But instead, he took this rare opportunity of complete creative control and gave us this zany movie that so masterfully skewers sequels and shows us how really pointless so many sequels are. And for that, I think Gremlins 2: The New Batch is just a little bit of a masterpiece and deserves a lot more love.
Our moviegoers so desperate for entertainment that this kind of trash and cast for fun. Whoa, wait a minute! This is kidding! Ow! A 10! It's a 10!
Thanks for watching. What do you think? Gremlins 2, is it bad? Is it good? What are some other underrated sequels? And if you liked the video, you should give it a like. And as always, for more Goblin thoughts, make sure you hit subscribe.